All right, so we're going to start off by talking about a five number summary. And a five number summary is used for a set of data. And when I say a set of data, I mean just a list of numbers. Okay, it's not a frequency distribution. But if we have a list of a single list of numbers, we can perform what's called a five number summary. The five number summary consists of what's called the minimum and the maximum value. So this is supposed to be minimum value, and that's supposed to be maximum value. That's the largest number and the smallest number in the data set. It also identifies the first quartile, which is Q1, the second quartile, which is Q2, and it's known also as the median. And the third quartile is Q3. So notice in this five number summary, there is no mode. There's no mean. There's only the median. So I wanted to explain the difference between the mean and the median. Because on some statistical layouts, you may see like for the salary, like if you're looking for a job and say like the median salary, and you would say, why is it not saying the mean salary? The mean takes into account all of the salaries. It'll add them up and divide by the number of salaries. So let's just say for nursing, for example. I don't really know how much nurses make, but let's just say if you're a first year nurse, you make like $30,000, I guess. And then let's say if you've been there, I don't know, 5 years, you make 60. And then let's say the highest paid nurse makes like $130,000 or whatever. So what you would do is you would take all of those. So you got a range now. You got the lowest is 30,000, and the highest is like 130,000. So if you were to add up every salary, divide by the number of salaries, you're going to get a score that may not be reasonable. Let me just write this down. So let's say if you got 30, and sometimes I forget that I'm on this. Just to show some numbers. All right, so let's just say a first year nurse makes about $30,000. Second year nurse makes about 50,000, and then let's just say a registered nurse. If you've been there for a long period of time, let's just say 130,000. Right. So as far as the mean is concerned, you would add up all of these numbers, right? 30,000 plus 50,000 plus 130,000. And I'm going to divide by 3. So you get the median is like $70,000, right? That's the mean. Now this is just I didn't make this up before, and that's just the mean, 70,000. Right. And this could be kind of misleading because when you start out, I don't really think you're gonna start out, your first year just with $70,000. Depends on how bad they need. Well, on how bad they need. But this is what the median is. You would put the numbers in order, and you would just take the score that's in the middle. When you have a mean, it takes into account like the largest salary, and it takes into account the smallest salary. So when you're looking at like the salaries for jobs, if you're looking for jobs, that's why they show the median score because it's a much more realistic value for the salary starting out. If that makes any sense. Okay. So that's a part of the 5-number summary. Okay, and we can also make a graph, I guess you can say, of a 5-number summary by what's called a box plot. And a box plot is just a graph that shows the 5-number summary, the minimum value, maximum value, Q1, Q2, which is the median, and Q3. Okay, so I'm going to go to the and this I can't actually write on this. All right, so we need the minimum score. You will find the minimum value here, right, represented by this line. All the vertical lines mean something. You will find the max value here. This is Q1, right? This vertical line. This is Q2. And then this is Q3. So now notice there's a graph, a number line down here. So the minimum value would be 16. Q1, which is the first quartile, is 17. The median, so notice they didn't write out Q2, they just wrote out median, which is synonymous with Q2. So the median value is 26. Q3 is 31, and the maximum value is 34. All right, so that's how you would read a box plot. All right, any questions about that? All right, so next we're going to talk about some statistical definitions. All right, we have the mean, right? And sometimes the mean is called the average. And mean is going to be represented by, this is called X bar. That's a mathematical symbol for mean, X bar. We have the median, which is the value that's in the center. We have the mode, which is the value that occurs most frequently. So if you're looking at a list of data, the value that appears the most amount of times is the mode. You can have more than one mode, right? If you have two numbers that appear the same number of times, that's called a bimodal, and you would actually list both of those numbers, okay, because they occur the most. You could also have 3 modes, right, if your data set allows that. Next, we have the range, and the range is given by taking the maximum value minus the minimum value. Right? So you just take the biggest number, smallest number, subtract. We have the standard deviation, and the standard deviation is a measure of variation about the mean. And then we have variance. The variance is equal to the square of the standard deviation. So if you were to take the standard deviation and square it, you get the variance. So to kind of give you a vision on what a standard deviation is, a standard deviation will be something like this, and this kind of goes to algebra a little bit. So let's just say that I have a line, and this is my mean value, okay, which is that X bar. All right. And then let's say around this mean, because You would take all the numbers in your data set, you would add them up, divide by the number of numbers, and that would give you a number, right? So this is what that number represents to me. So then if you take the rest of the numbers in your data set and you were to plot them, right, this is what the standard deviation means, a visual of it. The standard deviation is the distance from your point to the mean. And the standard deviation is always positive. So this little distance from here to here is the standard deviation for this point right here. The standard deviation for this point would be this distance, right? And then so on and so forth. Because all the time I'm asking, what does the standard deviation mean? And that's what it means, how far your point can stray from the mean. So all of these things would be standard deviations. Okay, that one would be one, and this one, and this one. So it's like a distance that it strays from the mean. Okay. Now, fortunately, we don't have to calculate that by hand. We're going to use the calculator, and we're going to use a calculator to calculate each one of these values. All right, so I'm going to go back to the handout, and I'm actually going to skip down to number 3. It says the highway mileage, and let me erase this. The highway mileage, miles per gallon for a sample of 8 different model of a car company can be found below. Find the mean, the median, the mode, the standard deviation, and round to 1 decimal place. All right. So we are going to use the calculator. Okay, so we have 27, 22, 20, 32, 34, 29, 25, and 34, right? So the first thing I'm going to do is put the list of numbers in L1, right? So I'm going to turn it on, right? And when I turn it on, I'm at my home screen. So in order to enter anything into the list, I want to hit stat, and I want to edit, right, which is already highlighted, so I'm going to hit enter. Okay. Now I already have a data set in here, so in order to just clear the list out completely, I'm going to go to the very top. I'm going to hit clear and enter. Right. So we're specifically using list 1. So I'm just going to put in those numbers. And you want to make sure that you hit enter after every number. All right, so we should have a list of 8 numbers. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And you should always just double check the numbers in your list. Okay, so it looks like I got them all. So that's the first thing, right? Put the numbers into the list on the calculator. And now I want to go back to the home screen. So I'm going to hit second and quit. So while I'm on the home screen, I want to perform the calculation. So I'm going to go into this list. Since it's yellow, that's the second function. I have to hit second and stat, which is the list. So this is to calculate the mean. All right, I want to scroll over to, let me just write that down. So I went to second and stat, right, which is actually the list. Right. I'm going to scroll over to math. I'm going to find mean. And I'm going to put in list 1 and enter. Second and stat, because you're actually trying to access this list.
Okay, so my home screen. Did you clear
the list out? That's right. Go over to math. Go over to math.
Well, I don't even
Well, no, okay, I'm sorry. L1 is down here. And close off your parentheses. Okay, so go back into this second and stat. Scroll over to math.
Oh, we're doing it. Okay.
That's right. It's 2 ways to do it. I'll show you both ways. Okay, okay. That's right. All right. So is everybody okay with the mean?
I have a question.
Uh-huh.
So when I was going through the homework, I was using one variable stat under the stat menu.
I'm gonna show that one too.
I just wanted to make sure there wasn't like a difference or.
No, it's not a difference. The only thing about the one stat variable is it doesn't give you the variance.
Yeah.
Okay.
It does on
On yours? Okay. I think it's on this 83's outdated. You got an 84 or a new? Okay, okay. All right, so you can find the standard. What's next? The mean. Then it's the median, right? So I can go back into this list, right, which is above stat. So it's second and stat.
Can I interrupt you just 1 second?
Uh-huh.
So what did you want that rounded to? They all have to be.
Oh, I'm sorry. That is 27.9.
Okay, so we're gonna round to the first 10.
That's right. So now when you round, it says the first decimal place. So you locate the number that's in the first decimal place. And then you would look one number to the right. And if that number is 5 or higher, you round up. But if it's less than 5, it stays where it is. So this would actually be.
We do the normal rounding on this one, not like the other one.
That's right. That's right.
So when do we know to do the other rounding?
We'll actually tell you in the. It'll actually tell you. Now there is a way you can make this round. I'll just show you that. If I go into mode, I just hit this mode button. And if I go down to float, so here's what this float means. nothing is highlighted now, so that means it'll just spit out all the decimals as many as the calculator can hold. But if you wanted to round to 1 decimal place, I can go into float and I can highlight 1. I'll just show you that. And I just hit enter. Now 1 is highlighted where there wasn't anything highlighted here before. I just hit mode. So I'll go back. So if you're on the home screen, right, and you just hit mode, this key right here, and then you want to go on the float. That actually means floating decimal point. So if I hit 1, that means it's going around to the first decimal place. So now if I go back to my home screen, and if I go through, so what I did right here, notice I didn't go all into the list and all of that. If you hit second and enter, it'll actually scroll back through the memory on your calculator. So the only thing I did, since this was the last input I did, when I hit second and enter, it would go back up. If I hit second and enter again, it goes back up to whatever I was dividing something by 3. So if I hit it again, it'll scroll back up through your memory. Right. And after you do it once, it like messes up. But so if I go back into list, operations, the mean for list 1, it should round to the first decimal place. Now here's one thing about doing that. It's gonna round everything to the first decimal place unless you go back in and change it.
Yeah. So can you tell us how to go back?
So to go back and change it, you would just hit mode and you would just set it to float. So that's like the standard setting when it's in float. So if you go back now, it's not gonna round it. It's not gonna round.
And all of these, like the median, and all of everything.
That's right.
And all of them, right? So that float, well, put it in the other, put it in 1. We can use like that, right?
That's right. So I'll just let it stay on float just to see how it works. Okay, so if you wanted to find the median, I can go back into list. I can go over to math. Right, so that's second stat, math, and you see there's a median. So if I hit enter, if I stick in list 1, I get 28. That's the median. You can also find, well, now you can't find the mode. You'd have to physically search the mode. So we're going to skip the mode. You can find the standard deviation. Yeah, all of these say round to 1 decimal place. So the standard deviation. So once again, you want to go to list, which is second in stat. I'm going to scroll over to math. You can find the standard deviation for list 1. Which is 5.3 rounded to 1 decimal place. Right. You can find the variance. Right, which is 28.4. Well, we have to calculate the range and the mode by hand. Okay. Well, I'll show you how to do. You can do it on the calculator, the range, but you have to do the mode by hand. We can also calculate. Well, we can find the minimum value and the maximum value. So if I go back into the list, which is second in stat, if I scroll over to math, notice this first option says min, that's the minimum value. So if I were to put in minimum for list 1, it would give me the smallest number, which is 20. And you can also find the maximum value. Right, which is that second option, which is 34. Right. Okay, so in order to find the range, right, I can subtract the smallest and the largest. So 34 minus 20 is going to be 14, right? Or you can actually put it in the calculator this way. You can take the maximum value for list 1 minus the minimum value for list 1. Oh, did I? Maximum. Okay, and then that'll give you 14. Okay. Now the mode, you have to find the mode by hand. So the best thing to do on the mode is take the data set and put it in order, and then just count the number of times, or you can actually see better. That's right. The mode would be the number that repeats the most amount of times. So if I were to just put that data set in order, I would hit second in list. Right. I would go to operations. So we have a sort A, which is ascending, sort D, which is descending. So I'm going to put this in ascending order. Okay, it doesn't really matter which order you put it in here. You just want to make sure that they're in order somehow, some way. So in order to view that, I have to go back into stat, right? And I hit edit. So now it's kind of letting me see everything. So 20 appears once, 22 only appears once, 25, 27, 29, 32, 30, 40 only appear once. So this data set has no mode.
34.
I'm just making sure y'all paying attention. 34 is the mode because it appears size. I told you I'm blind. So, all right. So any questions about that?
How did you find the variance again?
For the variance, I went to, let me just start from home screen. I went into the list, which is above stat. So it's a yellow function or a second function. So second and stat. Scroll over to math and scroll down to variance. And then if we put in list 1, we should get 28.4.